Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honeycrisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
At Consumer Cellular, you get the same exact coverage as the largest carriers, but for up to half the cost. Same thing, up to half the cost. Up to half the cost for the same thing. 50% the money for 100% the same thing. I hope I'm making myself clear. Consumer Cellular. When freedom calls, we're here to answer. Call us at 1-888-FREEDOM.
Half the cost savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single-line 5GB data plan with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single-line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plan offered by T-Mobile and Verizon May 2023.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, has got a little magic into the process here, reveal a little secret for our listeners. We are recording slightly later than normal on Wednesday evening because you were on Radio 5 earlier and I listened to you. You were very good as always, as you would be, considering you are apparently the presenter of the Price of Football podcast, which even Smudge looked up at me with a raised eyebrow going, that's going to be awkward when you record the pod. But I feel, Kieran, for the presenter that you were talking to, as I say, you were full of insight, but he knows how I feel now on a weekly basis, Kieran, because he ended with a question that he clearly had spent the whole day thinking, this is a clever question, this might catch him out. And basically, no, the answer was, I'm not quite sure what you're getting at there, but I don't agree with you. So you could almost hear his shoulders slumping, Kieran. Well done. You were talking about Chelsea mainly. The transfer window closed yesterday, Kieran, and I think we've all had enough of Chelsea. I think we all know now what Chelsea were doing and how they're allowed to do it. It's interesting, as you mentioned on the show this evening, that Graham Potter is almost nowhere to be seen in this scenario. But any other interesting angles, Kieran? One in particular that a few people have asked about is Everton. Now, I wondered if your instinct is that the Everton not signing anybody is due to football reasons, people reluctant to go to a struggling club, or is that due to possible financial fair play reasons?
I don't think Everton have a financial fair play problem because they sold Richarlison and they made a significant profit there. In respect of Anthony Gordon, because he's an academy player, it's pure profit from an FFP perspective. What did seem a bit strange is that having appointed a manager on Monday, the huge Arctic Monkeys fan, Sean Dyche, that you would have thought that given that he would have been interviewed for the job a week ago before, and they were making their final decision. And I think people are well aware that it was a choice between him and Bielsa, and I think Bielsa's suggestions were quite left field, so he effectively dropped out. I would have been very surprised if Sean Dyche had not gone into those interviews. So, look, if I am appointed, we need to do X, Y, Z in terms of recruitment. I've already done my research. Sean Dyche is a very thorough individual.
Indeed.
He already looked at Everton, identified strengths and weaknesses, and no doubt come up with a few suggestions as to how those weaknesses could have been plugged. And then for Everton to do absolutely nothing on transfer deadline day, and they were linked with players, does seem very strange. And if I look at Everton from a business management point of view, and I try to take the football club, just treat it as any other business. If you take a look at the success of any business, it comes down to three issues. First of all, does the business have resources? Well, Everton have. Farhad Moshiri has been a very generous benefactor. Secondly, does the business have opportunities to progress? Well, again, yes, it does. It's in the Premier League. It's in a football city. It has a 50,000 plus stadium, which is going to drop in a couple of years. So those are opportunities which would make it an attractive proposition. And the third issue, and perhaps the one which is proving to be quite angsty from an Everton fan's point of view, is you then look at the quality of decision making. And the reason why Apple is a success, the iPhone is a success, and the Microsoft phone is not a success, comes down to the quality of decision making of senior management. Now, I don't know what it's like to run a football club. I do know what it's like to run a business which has failed. And the most common thing that I noted when running companies which had gone into administration tended to be the quality of management and their ability or their lack of ability to see icebergs in the distance and prevent them and steer a different route and so on. So Everton, I think it is a cause for concern. The fans are very passionate. I share a corridor. I'm next to an office with an Everton fan, and to make matters worse, they've got their Everton calendar, and they switched across from January to February, and the February player of the month is Anthony Gordon. You can imagine the wailing and the gnashing of teeth when they saw that. And I tried to be collegiate. I tried to be supportive. I said, well, it could be worse. It could be a leap year. You might have to go and look at Anthony Gordon for 29 days instead of 28. And they didn't seem to think that was particularly supportive.
You would have expected Kieran, at least, because we know Sean Dyche. I've met him a few times. He's a really interesting, affable chap and very fascinating to talk about football. He has a certain way that he wants to play football and certain types of player. As you say, even allowing for the fact that he joined the club almost within hours of the transfer window closing, you would imagine that he would have identified, even if they were ex-championship players that he thought could do a job this season, a couple of dogs of war, which is the sort of language you think that he would be using, but nothing at all. It's very intriguing.
Yeah. I would have thought he would have tried to get Ashley Barnes, Chris Woods type of players who will run through a brick wall for you. And I'm making no accusations about lack of effort from individual Everton players, because I don't follow the club closely enough to form a judgment. And ultimately, we've always said we don't know that much about football. In fact, we know we both had the privilege of getting to know people in the football industry, and the more that I listen to them, the more I realise how completely clueless I am about the professional game from a technical, physical perspective. But he will have identified players to recruit, and the fact that nothing has been done isn't great.
And of course, all the newspapers today, Kieran, had their rundown of who came in and who went out at each club, and a couple had the same thing for women's football. And I noticed, Kieran, and I don't know if it's significant, that there was many comings and goings in the women's game yesterday, but only one, the Jordan Nobbs moving to Villa for £40,000. That was the only one in which a fee was mentioned. All the other players were either loan or undisclosed sum. Is there any significance in that?
I think it's a case of benchmarking in relation to the women's game, and in terms of the crowds, in terms of the revenues, I think we've got to benchmark perhaps against League One and League Two clubs in the main. And if you take a look at clubs at that level, there are quite a few clubs in League Two, for example, where the cost of the whole squad is zero. Because the club has relied on academy players, loanees, free transfers, Bosmans, and so on. I mean, to be fair, Arsenal did try to break the women's record fee, the world record fee, indeed, in respect of Russo. And Manchester United turned down offers, and I think that we got fairly close to £500,000. For people who are being a bit sniffy about that, well, you and I both remember Alan Ball being the record fee. and that was 200 grand, and that was 1970, 71, something like that. So there is greater interest, but the women's game is running at a loss, and under those circumstances, given that many of the men's teams are running at a loss as well, it's actually very difficult for the women's team manager to go to a chief executive who is themselves under huge pressure from the fan base, potentially from the owner, has got the men's team manager chipping in the ear as well, and try to get deals which are going to cost money, because there will be a perception, rightly or wrongly, that if you announce a £100,000 or £200,000 deal for a women's team player, that money should have been spent on the men's team. Now, it's not something that I agree with, but you can understand from a section of the fan base who might be quite vociferous that if they see money being spent on transfers in the women's side of the game, they, in my opinion, wrongly think that 99% of the chief executive's attention should be on the men's game. And given that if the men's team is relegated from the Premier League to the Championship, that can have huge repercussions for all of the budget of the club. And one of the first things that tends to get hit is the women's team's budget. So I don't think we should read too much into it, but I think it is indicative. The women's game on a national basis is absolutely brilliant, and we'll be coming to that in one of the stories a bit later. But at the WSL level and at the WSL Championship level, it is still running at a loss. And therefore, there's a lot of caution in terms of the ability to pay fees for individual players.
Now, Kieran, apart from your boy Cucurella at Brighton proving what we all suspected, that he was 100% committed to his favourite club all along, is there anything else in the transfer window that caught your imagination?
I don't think so. I mean, the fact that it was record spending. Some people are surprised. They're saying, we've got this economic paradox in that it's been predicted that the UK will have the worst performing economy of any developed nation over the course of the next 12 months, and yet the Premier League appears to be in its own little world, and the Premier League is outperforming the rest of European football. And the reason for that, whenever you're looking for changes in numbers or changes in figures, you should always try to identify drivers. And in terms of drivers, the fact that Bournemouth signed 2 players for £50 million on transfer deadline day, and this is not disrespecting Bournemouth at all, but people are going, Bournemouth, they've spent more money than AC Milan. They've spent more money than such a club. They've got new owners. So if we're looking for the reasons for the incredible level of spending, it's up 90% compared to last January. I think that there are 3 drivers. First of all, at the top of the Premier League, historically, 6 into 4 never went. 7 into 4 with Newcastle into the equation makes it more difficult. The fact that 2 of the clubs who you would expect to be competing for a top 4 place in the form of Chelsea and Liverpool are currently languishing in 9th and 10th means that they need to spend money in order to get into Europe. Secondly, we then look at the bottom of the Premier League. We've got 7 clubs within 3 points. So the incentive to spend, but why? We've seen Bournemouth spend, we've seen Forest spend, we've seen Leeds spend, we've seen Leicester spend, we've seen everybody spend except Everton, and this is the cause for concern, is because managers will put pressure on to executives and directors of football. We sign this one player, they get that 1 extra goal, they give us this 1 extra point that helps us to avoid relegation. That accelerates spending at the bottom of the division. And then we've got 3 new owners of clubs in Newcastle, in Bournemouth, and elsewhere. And all of a sudden, these owners want to spend money. Chelsea, of course, as well, are in that mix. And you put all those 3 together, and that means you get this whirlpool of desire to spending money. Is it sustainable? Well, based on my calculations, the Premier League, the 20 clubs between them, now owe a collective £2 billion in outstanding instalments on transfer fees. So it's a bit like your credit card company perhaps giving you a higher spending limit, and in the terms of the Premier League, it looks like they've got pretty close to that spending limit. But the whole nature about spending limits is that they are limits, and it doesn't tend to be sustainable in the long term. So I don't expect this level of expenditure to be repeated next January. And I think we could see some of the clubs that have been very active in the January window having to slow down their activity or operate a sell to buy policy when it comes to the summer window.
A higher spending limit on a credit card, you say? That's an interesting concept. I'm just going to write that down. And well done for not rising to my Brighton bait, by the way. I had an image of you and the Baroness poised over Sky Sports last night with finger and thumb round the champagne cork, ready to go when you realised he was staying. As we always knew, Kieran, he loves that club. He'll be there for 10 years. The Premier League being, and he's still not rising to it. That's excellent. I gave you a second opportunity to rise to it, and you refused. That's good supporting. Talking of the Premier League being its own little world, you and I have predicted for several months now that possibly clubs and leagues may be getting wary of the whole crypto thing, but the Premier League, the opposite this week.
Yes, the Premier League has signed a licensing deal, and I'm still not sure whether it's Sorare or I think of it as Sorare.
So do I, but we were told by many people that it is absolutely Sorare.
Oh, okay, fair enough then.
I think we probably assumed it was so rare because it's so rare for them to be any good. Move on.
So a deal's been signed between Sorare and the Premier League. Now, I think it's estimated to be in the region of 30 to 40 million pounds for a year. I think that will be split evenly between the clubs. Sorare is a five-a-side fantasy football game. And actually, that sounds quite appealing. I enjoy a bit of fantasy football. So far so good, and it is free to play. Even better. Where's the downside? Well, I signed up for Sorare, and I ended up, and this is no disrespect to any of the players that I was allocated. I've got a South Korean central midfielder, a goalkeeper from Paraguay, a centre half from Mozambique, and so on. I'm going. I'm not getting a lot of feeling of love. I'm not bonding with these players. So what you can do, and these players are sometimes what we refer to as sort of your standard players. And you think, well, okay, how is Sorare going to make money? And the way that it works is that there are different classifications of players. So there are common, rare, so rare, and unique. And I think if you at the rare level, I think there's 1,000 cards where you effectively get your digital card of which you have ownership. And we've given the analogy, and we won't. This is a family show, so I've said it's the equivalent of having a wedding certificate and somebody allowed to have relations with your wife or husband, and you saying, well, that's fine because I've still got the certificate. And it's exactly the same with these cards. People can copy these cards, people can print these off, people can stick them on websites, but you've got the digital receipt, and that allows you to sell the digital receipt. So it's not actually the players that are worth money. It's the fact that you have got ownership via of an image via a receipt. So if we take a look at Haaland, there are 100 of the rare level. And if you want to go and buy this card this digital card, which anybody in the whole world can print off from their computer. It's going to cost you £1,863.
What?
If you want the unique one, which is exactly the same photograph of Haaland, but it's got the word unique around the perimeter, and I think it's got a gold or, I'm colourblind, so I'm the worst person to ask, but around the perimeter of the photograph, instead of having a red background, it's got a yellow background or a silver background or something like that. It will cost you potentially hundreds of thousands. So the most rare cards are priced at ridiculous levels. And the way that you can buy them, I think you can buy them for traditional money, but you can also buy them using cryptocurrency. So you can, I think it's called ETH, which I don't think stands for Eric Ten Hag. It's something called Ethereum or something like that. And what Sorare have done is they've created artificial scarcity. By saying that there's only one unique Manchester City Haaland 22-23 card, and if he's playing in your fantasy five-a-side teams, then every time he touches the ball he gets points, every time he scores a goal he gets points, and let's face it, he's Erling Haaland. He's the player that everybody wants. So that's how they make their money, and they say it's not like other forms of fan tokens or non-fungible tokens, because they offer greater, and this is one of their buzzwords, which I've never really managed to dig deep in. They say, we've got more utility in our cards, and then you say, well, what exactly do you mean by that? And sort of when it's things like, you get a chance to go and perhaps you get a chance to meet a player at a training session, or you might get invited into the Sorare hospitality box at a ground if your card is chosen.
Or Kieran, you could print it off and use it as a rudimentary shovel, or print it off and put it underneath a budgie cage. Who knows? Could be that sort of utility.
That indeed is true, and perhaps it might be of more benefits to society for those particular purposes. And I'm thinking, well, isn't this the equivalent of you and I are old enough to remember the halftime draw?
Yeah,
at grounds. And you buy one, and quite often the clubs wouldn't necessarily even give cash prizes. It would be, next chance, at the next match you sit in the director's box, or you are invited to a training session, or at the next team photograph you get an opportunity to stand next to the manager in the club photograph. I've seen all of this stuff over the years, and that's what Sorare are offering. From the club's point of view, I'm trying to be as even-handed as I can here. If you're a club like Liverpool or Manchester United or Chelsea, you've got hundreds of millions of fans all around the world. This is a way of, again, buzzword, engaging with your fan base. Another word for engaging is relieving your fan base of cash. And if they want to do that, then fine. And there is the opportunity to play this game for nothing, but you will get very, very bored very, very quickly if you buy or rather if you just enter it, because it's very difficult to make progress. So that's where the Premier League are. I think there is an investigation by the Gambling Commission to try to determine whether or not this is gambling, because the value of the players being bought and sold, and you can sell your cards to a certain extent, is dependent upon their performance and their perceived value and so on. Well, that effectively is putting value on the basis of an uncertain future event. Well, what is gambling? It's putting money into an uncertain future event, be it the spin of the wheel, the speed of a racehorse, the numbers that come up on a lottery ticket, and so on. And therefore, should there be some greater scrutiny? Should there be greater systems of checks and balances? There are some very high-profile, wealthy people involved in sport who are in these schemes. And my concern would be, if I wanted to incentivize a well-known football player to join the scheme, first of all, I'd say, can you go and put this out on your social media account? And by the way, I'll promise you a unique card of yourself, and you'll be able to sell that at a huge amount of money to some mug. And that's where I start to feel uncomfortable, because it's all propped up by the bigger fall theory that there will be somebody elsewhere in the world, is that if you've paid £1,863 for an Erling Haaland rare card, that somebody will be willing to pay £1,864 for your receipt. And that ultimately is what you're buying and selling.
Two quick things, Kieran, before I ask you a question off the back of this. First of all, your wedding certificate analogy is almost indescribably far from the actual description you originally gave me. And I can only suggest that people come along to one of our live shows if they want to hear what the actual comparison is. Secondly, I'm almost glad that my father-in-law isn't living in this world, because he would be absolutely furious to learn that Sorare have more than one unique trading card. If it's unique, there's only one of them. So let's leave that there. Secondly, the question though, Kieran, is: do we know how much this licensing deal is? Is any money made from it spread evenly between the 20 clubs in the Premier League? What's in it for them, basically?
I think it will work out as £2 million per club if the quoted figure of 40 million.
Right.
The way that the Premier League operates is that in terms of the broadcasting deal, as where effectively 50% is split evenly, 25% is split on the number of times you're chosen for live broadcast, 25% is given in terms of your final league position. And then the Premier League has another pot, which is called sort of central promotions, where any sponsorship of the Premier League, the Premier League now has its own bank sponsor and so on. All of that goes into a pot which is spread evenly. Now, I'm sure certain clubs would like to get a disproportionate amount of that, but at present, in order for that to be achieved, they would need 14 votes, and there doesn't appear to be an appetite for it. And that's good. I mean, that helps to support the less rich from the ultra rich, and hopefully this will be one of the things which would be supported by the independent regulator of football, should one ever come about.
That gives me a moment, Kieran, to plug an interview which we have for everybody coming out on Friday with Tony Taylor, who's a trustee of Level Playing Field, a charity advocating for the rights of disabled football fans and sports fans. The reason I mention it is that 5 minutes into the interview, he talks about his relationship with Tracy Crouch. And I just thanked God you weren't able to do the interview, Kieran, because I think there would have been coats off, hold my pint from you. And I said, did Tracy mention Kieran? I said, I'm amazed that Tracy had the time to even talk to you. Did she mention Kieran? Did she show you her Kieran Maguire tattoo? So that interview, and it's a really, really fascinating interview. I learned, I think you and I have both learned a lot more, Kieran, in the last couple of weeks about the economic and physical realities of being a disabled fan. So I would really recommend you listen to that interview, which will be dropping, I believe, producer Guy says, tomorrow. And we have two stories from Italy now, Kieran. I'm going to save the Andrea Agnelli one to give you a bit of time to compose yourself and wipe the smile off your face, because I know it's one you're really pleased about. But we learned this week that it's not just the Premier League that has got a bit of extra money coming their way.
Yes, this has not yet been set in stone,
right?
But it does appear that there has been a proposal. There's been a presentation from J.P. Morgan, the US investment bank, who are also the people who are willing to fund Super League, to give Serie A somewhere between 700 million and €1 billion for a share of future broadcast rights. Now, Italian football, it is going through a bit of a scandal at present. I think there are systemic problems. There are structural problems with the game, a lack of investment in infrastructure. The broadcasting deal is not showing signs of growth. It's certainly not being internationalized to the level where it perhaps could be. At the same time, we've got Napoli having a fantastic season, and it's good to see a different club at the top of Serie A. But in respect of this, the way that it would work is that presumably JP Morgan or whoever is going to be the ultimate benefactor here gives that Serie A a large sum of money, which is then split probably evenly between the individual clubs. And on the back of that, JP Morgan or the other party would then take a percentage of future TV deals. So there are certain parallels with the payday loan here, although I think the difference with the payday loan is that we don't know how big those TV deals are going to be in the future. So therefore, the bank is taking on an element of risk. Now, if people think, well, this is great, this is a good quick fix for Italian football, I would point them in the direction of rugby union in terms of the clubs in the Premiership in rugby union here in England. And I know you're not a rugby fan, but I think the financial analogies are interesting to be concerned about. There's a private investing fund called CVC, and they gave the clubs in the Aviva Premiership around about £12 million each. And this was, I think, in 2019. And this was described as a new era for rugby. Yeah. And everybody got very excited because, he's got £12 million. Yeah, happy days. And CVC said, so, yeah, by the way, we're taking 20% of your TV deal. We're taking 27% of your money going forwards. And they go, yes, okay. So look, we've just got £12 million. We don't really care. And then, of course, within a couple of years, we've got Wasps Rugby Club in administration. We've got Worcester Warriors Rugby Club in administration, both effectively being chucked out of the league. We don't know what the future of those clubs is going to be. I think CVC have done something similar with the Six Nations. I think the Six Nations are probably in a slightly more robust financial position. But this would be my cause for concern, is that if the Italian football generates around about half the amount of money as the Premier League in terms of broadcast deals. And yes, it's always nice to get money. I'm not denying that. But if you then say, by the way, you're only going to get 80% of the TV deal for the next 20, 30 years. So nobody knows the full details. Then that gap with the Premier League, you find, actually gets bigger and bigger and bigger, because whoever the bank happens to be in terms of this deal, they're the people that have done their sums. And if there's one thing I know about bankers, is that when they are on a deal, they're on the winning side every single time. So unless you really do check the small print, I think there's a danger of a short-term gain here for Italian football. That's if it goes ahead. We don't know whether it will or not. Followed by a period of long-term reflection. It's a bit like, and as you know, I don't drink, but I do have friends that have gone out, had a few sherbets, gone to a late night tattoo parlor, and then I don't remember a woman called Mary, but I've got her on my arm for the next 40 years.
Yeah. I had, similar circumstances in which a mate of mine bought a greyhound, which is still being reminded of on a regular basis. Kieran, it's not that I'm not a fan of rugby as such. It's just I prefer a game when you can see the ball occasionally, basically, not, of course, that it is a ball, which we've ascertained over many years on this podcast.
We have indeed.
Our second story in Italy, Kieran, I'm just going to say the words Agnelli, possible legal action, and UEFA. Let you chuckle for a second or two, and then we'll come back and move on with the rest of the pod.
Yes, Mr. Agnelli, the former chair, the former board member of Juventus, who's presently just started a 2-year ban from Italian football on charges related to false accounting, market manipulation, and filing misleading financial statements. All of which, of course, he will dismiss with a cheeky smile and say, "No, it wasn't me, Gov." He now appears to be on UEFA's naughty step as well for potential breach of contract, because during the period where the allegations have been made against Juventus, and remember, Juventus are appealing this particular set of rules, he was on the executive committee of UEFA, and he signed a contract in terms of his behaviour, which would not cause any financial damage to UEFA. Well, I think it could be argued that if Juventus have suffered financial damage, then indirectly UEFA have suffered financial damage, and therefore he could be up on additional charges from UEFA. Now, it's well known that Alex Severin, who is the president of UEFA, of whom Andrea Agnelli was the godfather to Severin's. I think got Severin's daughter, the daughter who subsequently described Agnelli as a snake, would be absolutely delighted if this took place. I would always urge an element of caution, because when it comes to revenge, I am quite a vengeful person. I do bear a grudge. I've still not forgiven my economics teacher at A level. I was so dull. I mean, if people think I'm dull now because all I talk about is amortization, I was so dull at school that there was some scholarships for economic students. And the teacher went round every single person in the class, said, "Well, I'm thinking you should be good for the scholarship." And when he got to me, because I'm so boring, he couldn't remember my name, so he just skipped me and went on to the next person. And I've never forget. And I'll go, and still I go, "I'm the only person that got grade A in economics in our school that year, and I'm the only person that wasn't given a potential scholarship." And I've still not forgiven Ray Parkinson not forgetting my name. He didn't even know my name. I was just that boring. So I am a vengeful person. But in the case of Agnelli, I would just take it carefully and get your I's dotted and your T's crossed before making any claims against him, because you get one chance to get it right in law, and I would. To quote Kevin Kieran, I would love it if he was up before the beak, but only if you got a watertight case.
Kieran, when you were on that beach in Trinidad, out there working, or when you were living it up in those Moscow nightclubs, were you really thinking, "Curse you, Ray Parkinson, I could have been marking essays in Colchester now"? If it's any consolation, Kieran, in 1971 at primary school, our class was offered tickets to go and see a Tutankhamun exhibition, but we had 31 children in the class and only 30 tickets. I was the only one in the class with any remote interest in history and was really excited about this. But they did a little draw because they were harsher times, Kieran, and I was the kid that didn't get to go and see Tutankhamun. Well,
oh no!
While 30 other uninterested 10-year-olds were laughing it up at the British Museum, I still haven't quite got over that. And do you know who I blame? Tutankhamun. It's my dad, God rest him, loved ancient Egypt, but every time he put something on about ancient Egypt, I said, "Right, we're turning this off. I'm taking Channel 5 off you because it's all Tutankhamun, basically."
Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honeycrisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
Chelsea may not be short of players, Kieran, but they are short of sponsors for next season.
Yes. In terms of the two main sponsors, which is the front of shirt deal and the sleeve deal, I think we covered in December that Whalefin, who are this crypto platform, have got rid of the vast majority of their staff, it would appear to be financially struggling, and they signed what at the time was believed to be a record deal with Chelsea. Somewhere it's estimated to be £20 million, and they've said, right, we want to terminate after 1 year. And Three, who are the front of shirt deal sponsor, their deal ends in June 23. Now, this could be an opportunity for Chelsea. if they are still 10th at the end of this season, I think it will be more difficult to get maximum value from a sponsor because sponsors are looking for global participation in big tournaments, and they'd have to wait at least another 12 months for that to come through. But I think it does indicate that the fact that they've not mentioned the new sponsors yet, these things take time. I'm not denying that, and that's another reference to a Smith song title for those of you ticking off the box. That it may be more of a struggle, and there's a case for saying, have we peaked in terms of front of shirt sponsorship deals? Certainly, in the case of Manchester United, the team viewer deal is thought to be worth less money than that of Chevrolet. Team viewer have walked away from that deal as well. If the clubs are not delivering in terms of trophies, and remember Chelsea won the Champions League in 2021, they are still, I think, the World Club champions. They do have a lot of appeal potentially, but nothing is guaranteed in the world of sponsorship.
I think a lot of our listeners, Kieran, would be surprised a little bit like me that even a club with the glamour and the cachet of Chelsea are still going to have to accept a discount if they're not in the Champions League or Europe. It seems a bit odd. You'd like to think they're almost one of those brands that were untouchable in a way.
Well, it all comes down to eyeballs, and
simple as that. Right. Okay.
A Tuesday or Wednesday night when you're hosting Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, PSG, or and I can still remember when Chelsea played Liverpool in the Champions League, those two league games. That was box office, not just here in the UK but around the world, and that's what the sponsors are looking for, because these matches are going to the US, they are going to the Asian market, and they are going to the African market as well as domestic, and they deliver fantastic viewing figures for broadcasters.
This next story is a slightly odd one, Kieran, in that I was aware that the Northampton Town Supporters Trust were trying to bid for the land at Sixfields, and I was aware that they may have somebody helping them, and we now have discovered who that somebody was, that mystery partner, haven't we?
Yes, this is. The story of Northampton Town is a very sad one. We know that there was money allocated for redevelopment of the grounds. I think we're talking around about £10 million, and that money was not spent.
Yeah.
And what happened to it is proving to be an interesting exercise for some of Uncle Terry's least favourite friends, we should say. But there was an offer made to acquire 21 acres of land next to Sixfields by a company called Kildara. And this is a company which it's only set up in 2019, but does appear to have quite a few assets. And they bid £3 million for the land, and it looked like it was going to go ahead, and then the council said no. Subsequently, the football club bid £2 million for the land, and the council said yes. So Kildara said, well, hold on, this isn't in the best interests of local taxpayers. So they mounted some form of legal challenge. And then the Northampton Town Trust came into view, and they said, here's sort of a compromise. We'll bid £3 million for the land, and that would appear everybody wins.
Yeah.
And that has, and you go, hold on, where's the trust got £3 million from?
Yeah.
And it subsequently appears that this company Kildara was, via another related party or associated party, appeared to be providing the trust with the £3 million. The council sort of began to smell a bit of a rat here, and the supporters trust withdrew their offer. They said, there's too many conditions being set by the council. We didn't realise, and it looks like they did a bit of a reverse ferret, and now the fans groups who are sort of independent of the trust are going, hold on, we thought the trust were doing everything in the best interest of the fan base. So it now appears that I think this is a fairly unusual situation that I was talking to or contacting by a mutual friend of ours, or mentioned to you after the show, who said, well, the position is now the fans will be protesting against their own supporters' trust at the next home game.
Right.
Such is the level of letdown and distrust that a certain section of the fan base feel. My advice in all of these things is communication. Build barriers, don't break them down. Find common ground. But it could be that some people might need to move on from their positions if there has been a breach of confidence in terms of the fan base and the trust. So it's sad because I don't think we've ever had a good story in relation to Northampton Town.
No.
And it's further evidence that, as always said, if you're a Northampton Town football supporter, you are as dedicated. You love your club just as much as that of a fan of Barcelona or Manchester United or Bayern Munich, or it just happens to be it's your town, it's your identity, it's your club, it's your history, it's your heritage, it's your memories. So they've not had good news in relation to the development of the stadium now for quite a few years, and this appears to be yet another setback.
It's also unusual, Kieran, rare, in fact, to hear a story about supporters' trust with negative connotations. I mean, we quite often discuss the fact that they have difficulty financing bids for clubs, but normally there's I hesitate to use the word trust, but there is normally a degree of trust and support between fans and the supporters' trust because both sides recognise that they are the people who go to games home and away, aren't they?
Yes. So I think as always the devil's in the detail, and I don't want to prejudge anything here, but it doesn't sound too clever. I think there has been perhaps opportunities to be more transparent haven't necessarily been seized, and people have lost out as a result.
Yeah, I suspect we're going to get tweets on this one, Kieran, from all sides of the story. As indeed we got in relation to my geographical knowledge, which for some reason, Kieran, people listening to this pod seem to think is lacking in certain places. But I can confidently say that this story takes us to the northeast, and a legendary non-league club in the northeast, Blythe Spartans, the nursery club for many First Division and Premier League football over the years. But some bad news for them in their latest financial year. Or is it bad news, Kieran?
I think it's indicative of non-league football, where we tend to think, clubs must break even at that particular tier. So Blythe Spartans, they're in the National League North. I'll be honest, they're not having a great season. No. They're 23rd. It's where Dan Burn comes from, and regardless of which football team you support, I think Dan Burn's one of those footballers who intuitively you just want to like, because he does play with a smile on his face.
Yeah, I'll contradict you there, Kieran. Where he's at now, yes, I quite agree. Yeah, his previous club, less so.
I can understand if there's a rivalry involved, and I love the fact that Dan Burn, big lad, very big lad. He drives a smart car. Those 2-seater folder ones. So it goes up into my estimation for that. But he's from Blythe Spartans, and I think that's part of the reason why he has achieved cult hero status in Newcastle, because he's the personification of every Geordie's dream. He's worked his way.
He's a good player as well. Let's be fair.
And people think, he can't. All he can do is head the ball. He's got far more to his game than that. But they lost $100,000 in a year, and this is a club at the 6th tier of English football. And I think this shows that the running costs in football are high and have got higher over the course of the last year. Blythe Spartans, we confidently can say it is in the northeast, but they've got to travel fair distances because the north is pretty big. and they're at they're at sort of an apex of the north, as it were. Then you've got heating and lighting costs and floodlight costs and maintenance of the ground and so on. And I think it just is indicative of, regardless of the position of the club in non-league football, unless you've got somebody willing to effectively underwrite significant amounts of money, it's a really tough gig.
Yeah. This next one, Kieran, this story from France. I'm actually really looking forward to hearing what the outcome of this is, because I did a double take with them when Guy sent it through to me. It's a story about Reims and their manager.
Yes. Every time that Reims Football Club, who are in Ligue 1, every time that they play a match, they are fined €27,000. And the reason for this is their manager, Will Still. And Will Still is a fantastic success story. He's only 30 years old. He started getting into football management by playing the video game Football Manager. And remember, we've had Miles from Football Manager on the show, and it is a fascinating product. And as you know, I am presently banned from playing it by the Baroness on the grounds that, having spoken to every single media organisation on the planet over the course of the last 48 hours trying to explain amortization, if she said, if you think you're going to go, because normally I say, I need to relax now, darling. I need. I've just been talking to New Zealand's third largest radio station, and I need a celebrity come down by playing Football Manager. And she says, no, you're not doing that. So he started his managerial career, and this is sort of part of this sort of restores your love of the remote. He started with Preston under-14s. He's been prepared to move, and he was the assistant manager to Oscar Garcia, the former manager of Brighton and Hove Albion, who was sacked on the 13th of October. Right. Now, initially, Reims said, "Can you be an interim manager until we recruit somebody?" Will went straight into his interim role, and they won the next 5 games. So Reims said, "Fantastic, we'd like you to be our manager on a full-time basis." But he hadn't had the time or the opportunity to get his pro license. And in French football, in order to be a first-team manager, you need a certain level of qualifications. And part of me thinks that's absolutely fantastic, because it is a professional role, and therefore there should be a level of professional qualification required, and that protects clubs. That protect because otherwise you end up with the club owner saying, "I'll be the manager," or "one of my kids will be the manager," and a club which is the heartbeat of of so many people's lives just goes down the toilet because it's treated in a bad way. So he's now working at his pro license, but every match until he achieves that ambition, they're going to have to go and pay a not inconsiderable sum. I think it's €27,000. And I just wish him all the best. And he's only 30 years old. It would be, we should just say all the best for the rest of your career, because it's a great goodwill story. Somebody that's had an opportunity, taken that opportunity at such a young age. Somebody that's been willing to go overseas as well to acquire and broaden their skill set. Sometimes we can be a bit parochial. I think Will has got dual British and Belgian citizenship and heritage and so on. But just good luck to the lad.
Is his name Will Steele or Will Steele?
Still, as in Steele, not moving.
Well, that's going to be confusing. A very good friend of mine, a very good writer, his name is Will Ing, which it must be a really annoying thing, because 25 years later, it still makes us laugh. Are you willing?
Yes.
Bless him. Anyway, my last 2 stories, Kieran, are about women's football, and they're both good in their own way, I think. And the first one is about the opening game of the 2023 Women's World Cup, which is approaching to everybody's excitement.
Yes. So the FIFA 2023 World Cup is taking place in Australia. Yeah. The inaugural match that they put tickets up for sale. The stadium holds just over 40,000 people. and it sold out. It sold out practically straight away.
Great.
So what they're now having to do is to shift. I think they're shifting it to Sydney, and it's going to go in an 85,000 capacity stadium. It looks like that's going to sell out as well. And I think this is further indication of the health of the national game in terms of women's football. It's between Australia and the Republic of Ireland. I'm sure there will be many Irish expats, or especially if it's in a major city in Australia, they will be there. They will be offering support. So I think that's a really good story with regards to the 2023 World Cup. There's another story about which I feel slightly conflicted, and this is because the FIFA 2023 Women's World Cup, it's now going to have its main sponsor is going to be the Saudi Arabian Tourism Board. Now, given the patriarchal society that exists in Saudi Arabia and the lack of opportunities for women, it does seem somewhat inconsistent for the Saudi Arabian Tourist Authority to therefore sponsor the women's game at such a level. Now, as far as FIFA is concerned, how big's the check? Thank you very much. And they will have moved on. But I'm sure some of the women's players were going, well, what are the opportunities for women's football in Saudi Arabia? And I must confess, I don't know enough of the details, but and there has been forward movement in terms of women's rights, but I think they've been glacial rather than rapid in terms of opportunities for women in the country.
That's something to look at and discuss later on, I think. But in America, more evidence, Kieran, that the global women's game is growing.
Yes, in the US football system, if you want to introduce a new city, a new team, and this is both in the MLS and the women's MLS as well, Major League Soccer, you have to pay what is known as an expansion fee. So effectively, it's the same as when you're buying any other franchise product. You have to pay a sum of money to the franchise operator, and then they will give you the license, and that applies. McDonald's has got some stuff out on franchise, and if I want to open a McDonald's store, somebody I have to go and pay McDonald's money and so on. And that's the way that it works, and it's based on supply and demand. But it looks as if there is still expansion in the women's soccer league in the US, which is fantastic. But the next expansion fee is going to be $50 million, and that's incredible. I think that is indicative of the US sport being quite a way ahead of European women's football. And I think it's also representative of the way that the development of women's football operates in the States, because you've got the college system there, you've got the draft system, you've got the sealed leagues. And therefore, sort of the pathway and development of the game is more secure. And whilst I think here, the WSL has made huge progress, there is still an inherent problem that we talk about academy football, but academy football in the UK is men's academy football. The proper academies for girls football, in order for them to develop to become professional players, really isn't there. It is still a long way behind, and I think that's where the American game has an advantage. But the fact that some investor is willing to pay up to £50 million to, I think we're looking at places like Utah, I can't remember the name of it, I think it's 2 potential cities, is a sign of the level of confidence that there is in the women's game in the States, and that the investors feel that it can continue to grow, and it is likely to be a continued success over there.
Before we go, Kieran, with our usual goodbye and thank you, I'm sure our listeners would like to join me in congratulating you, Kieran, in a remarkable achievement. I think we all know that you have 2 great aims in life. The first is to throw some light onto the murky world of football finance, and the second is to invent as many rude words as you possibly can. And on the second one, Kieran, you had some great news this week.
Yes, I am very childish. As anybody with ever worked with me, aren't you supposed to be a professional? And I still have a love of silly, childish humour. So yes, this week I have my 43rd entry in the Viz Profanosaurus. And for those of you unfamiliar with what the Profanosaurus is, it's a dictionary of smut and innuendo. I quite often, I'll be walking thinly, and then a phrase or word will hit me, and I will try to develop it. And you're a professional comedian. This comes second nature to you. I'm not. I'm a weirdo. When I got divorced, my wife actually said on the divorce papers, "He's just odd." And you try going before a divorce lawyer, a divorce judge, and he
sorry,
said,
is that illegal?
And after 5 minutes, the judge said, "Yeah, actually is." And that's So for me, I am dead chuffed, and so I've been submitting entries of rude words and phrases to Viz magazine. I've been a subscriber for probably 35 years. At least, and I've got my 43rd entry in the current issue. I don't want to repeat it on the family show because it wouldn't be appropriate. But yeah, I'm feeling quite chuffed.
I apologise for that outburst of laughter. It's very unusual for a comedian to laugh at anything that anybody else says. But are you sure that being old is a legal concept, Kieran? Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution as well, then that'd be very kind of you. You can do so by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. And if you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Monday with our weekly questions pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thanks as always to everybody for the support for the show, for interacting us in all of those different ways, and it keeps us going. It does feel that when we're just sitting with our earphones on, just chatting away to each other, we have a great time. And I've always said to work, and I'm not blowing smoke up Kevin's backside. To work with a professional broadcaster and somebody like producer guy as well. For me, I'm just a teacher. I still have to pinch myself. But there's various other ways that you can support the show, and one of those ways is to give us a review. Kevin and I, we don't quite understand how it works, but producer guy says helps in the algorithms, helps in the charts, helps with the reputation of the show, and so on. And you can give us a review, give us whatever you think we're worth. It doesn't matter what you say in the narrative. So you could even say you would rather have the show presented by two titans of the Northeast, in Dan Byrne and Finbar Saunders of Finbar Saunders and his double entendres from Viz magazine, and it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference to us.
Kieran, never say you're just a teacher. That's like saying you're just a nurse or just an ambulance driver. You're not just a teacher. It's a noble calling, Kieran.
Oh, I'm dead proud. I'm dead proud to be a teacher, but whenever people want to take me down a peg or two, especially on social media, I get he's just a teacher. Those that can do, those that can't teach comment. So that's sort of me saying hello to them.
The price of football. The price of football.